So yeah, I know we did a live stream, although it's fun. It's always fun to see some new faces on the Wednesday live stream. So that's cool. Thank you guys for coming on. Yeah, I worked until like 4 a.m. this morning, and I wasn't prepared. I'm not firing on all cylinders. I'll warn you up front today. I'm not firing on all cylinders. Just a little bit ago, I went to go, make a little drink. It's just water with like an electrolyte packet, right? So I go and I rip the top off the electrolyte packet, and I walk over to the garbage to throw the top that I just ripped off in the garbage, and end up pouring the entire packet in the garbage. And I was just like, after I did it, I was like, what the heck am I doing?
Get your life together, man.
Well,
you did ship a nice update to points, so that's
that was a great one, wasn't it? Here, why don't we start off with that? Let's see. Go ahead and share. Oh, we got someone in the chat. Okay, let's go ahead and let's share.
Man, Shift S.
There we go.
There
you go. So if you aren't a points user, if you know what point here, let's show off kind of what points is, I guess, really quick for those that don't know what points is. So points is basically an image map, right? Where you can have a background image, and then you can have various points over that can have tooltips. And then when you click on the point, there's many different things you can do. Like in this example here, it opens up a light box to show a picture of the stadium that held that World Cup, right? So there's all kinds of things here. It's overlaying on top of my Google Map stack, so you can overlay there. Here's another example where I'm hovering over a point, and you'll notice the caption on the bottom, right? So, there's tons of different things you could do. This one links out to different web pages. This one, it integrates with a bunch of stuff. So that one opens up a glider. This one opens up Notice up here. This one opens up Glider, Pop Drop, right? So, I mean, it integrates with like over 20 different stacks to do some really cool stuff. Okay. And as you see, the points can be these. I'm not talking to you, Siri. Shut up. Sorry, Siri gets in the way of something. Okay. I love these pulsating points, but you can do all kinds of stuff. So here it's just I used an image of a pin, and you can do all. Here's an image of a soccer ball. So yeah, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to have these pulsating animation as well. I just think it's like really, really cool. So I use it a few times in the demo. Okay.
I have your previous version. What's the difference with the new one with 2.4?
Well, 2.4 was a free update if you had points 2. So if you own points 2. anything, 2.4 is a free update. Okay. So that's good. As long as you own at least stacks, I think it was 4.3 is what it requires. Okay. So as long as you have stacks 4.3, it'll work. So you should see the update. So let's talk about what's new. Yeah. So let's talk about what's new. So one of the most requested features that I had is the ability to manage the points using Total CMS. Okay. So for example, let's open up the points project really quick. And I cannot type today either. All right, so here's an example of points from the demo that we saw just a few seconds ago. And what users have been asking me is they want to be able to configure where these points are. Okay. But they're unable to before that there's these sliders, right? And with Total CMS, you can, or Easy CMS, you can use macros to, get data from the CMS and into a stack. However, because these values are sliders, okay, you weren't able to do that. So now with this advanced positioning setting, We have the ability to have a text box that allows us to basically, here you can type in a number value by default, or you can put in something like a total CMS or easy CMS macro. Okay. And you can also use a macro here for the info, which is the little tooltip. Okay. And then other places that people wanted was when you define a warehoused image, they want to be able to use a macro there as well. So so now every single one of these points could now be managed, its location and the tooltip information for it, and the image, if it's an associated image, they can all be managed now using Total CMS, okay, or Easy CMS. So that's pretty cool. Now, I wanted to take that a little bit farther though, because just being able to check this and then saying, defining this, that wasn't a lot of work, right? Okay. That wasn't too difficult to accomplish that. It's just giving you a different way of inputting these values. Okay. So what else would be cool, right? So the way I described it is, let's take this example here. We have 7 points on this image. In order to manage the data for all 7 of these, we would need to create 3 total CMS fields for each one. That's 27 fields, right? That's a lot of work, right? And on top of that, what if the customer wanted to add an 8th point for some reason, right? How would they do that? Well, they'd have to contact you, then you'd have to add 3 more fields and blah, 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 right? So let's make that easier. So let me go to an online demo that I had set up. Hopefully people didn't mess it up too much. Oh, look at that. They didn't really mess it up that much. Okay. So here we have a demo, and this top points demo here is completely managed with Total CMS blog. Okay. So the background image is managed just by uploading an image here. Okay. And that's just a normal Total CMS image. And then here, what I'm doing is I created a blog, okay, where each blog post is a point. Okay. So here I have a little form. If I go ahead and let's say, let's edit this center one here. Okay. So I can go ahead and click on this center, and then I can edit that information. So here we see the info is center, and then I have horizontal and vertical positioning, right? So let's just change that to be vertical 0, right? Or vertical 5. Okay. So we're going to do vertical 5. We're going to save that. Let's reload the page. And when I reload the page, that center point is now up here. Right. And so with here, I can now add as many new points as I want. If I can go ahead and click on new point. Right. And then in here, I can go live stream point, and let's give it a position. I don't know, 60, or let's do 90 and 50. So it'll be on the center of the far right side. So we go save. Okay. Reload this page. And there it is. There's my live stream point, right? So I just added that right now. So now we have full control over, adding as many points as we want to the image. We have control over the actual image as well. We have control over the tooltip that comes, right? So we got a lot of stuff we can do here. Really, really cool.
Great. Awesome. Whatever one.
If these points linked to, let's say, a URL, you can have that URL as a 4th data point here, right? So then, that point would link to a particular page or URL or something like that, right? Not all the actions would be super easy to make. Like if you were each of these loaded a light box, like then you'd have to have the ability to the customer to like auto add a light box. I'm not saying that's impossible, but it might take some brain work, right? But something simple like, click on this and go to a URL would be really easy. Okay. Now, since I integrated blog, another great and popular stack out there right now is feeds. So I thought it was very an interesting idea to also take this and integrate it with feeds. So here's an example where I have a feed stack and I just pass it a CSV file of info and coordinates. So basically what shows up in the tooltip and the coordinates of that point. And then basically all I do is I create a point for each one of those. So let's go ahead and look at that. So there we go. This is what the CSV file creates for me. Right now, here I'm loading it from a CSV data, but this could load it from a CSV file on your server. It could load it from a database. It could load, I mean, pretty much any data source that Total CMS, or I'm sorry, any data source that feeds provides, you can now integrate it into points using feeds. Pretty cool. And implementing this is really simple too. While we're looking at feeds, I'll show you how to implement it. So normally with points, you would just go ahead and click on this and it would add a point here, right? But we don't want to add points manually. We want to do it dynamically. So what I did is I dragged a feeds stack into where a point would normally be, okay? And then I if you notice here, I added the point inside of feeds, okay? Now, let's look at our data. So here, if we look at our CSV data, I have 3 data points in my CSV. I have info, X, and Y. I know that's pretty tiny, but you see that I have 3 data points there. Info, which is the text in the tooltip, X, which is the X coordinate, and Y, which is the Y coordinate. Okay. Then in my point stack, all I need to do is inject that data directly into the point. So I inject my X coordinate into the X position, the Y coordinate into the Y position, and my info directly into the info. And that's it. Super easy. Okay. And doing it with blog is just as simple. Here I'm using Total Loop, which is sort of like a feeds counterpart in Total CMS. And I tell it to loop through all my blog posts. Okay. Now in blog, I kind of repurposed some feeds because we're kind of hijacking blog. So I'm using the author field for the X position, the genre field for the Y position, and the title for the info. So all I need to do is inject those macros directly into there, and we're done. Okay. Super easy. Any questions?
So you just made it easier. That's what you did. That's good.
Yeah, I made it easier and easier to manage this stuff and add data easier instead of having to click each one and managing them all individually. Yeah, it's nice. Has anyone played around with it yet, or any questions that I can answer with that?
I haven't got that one yet, but it looks interesting.
Sweet.
I got the filters one because I was playing around with Moving Box yesterday.
Oh, okay, cool. Very cool.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's gonna be slick. I mean, people have been wanting that for a long time. So I'm glad someone finally, it was a few weeks ago, wanted the ability to add Total CMS macros. And I was like, you know what, while I'm working in this thing, let's just go all out, add, on this ability to make the stack just that much better. So
we can still set the diameter, if you will, of the point that you're
yes, you can still manage inside points. You can manage the size and the colors of all those points. Yes. You can also define a class for every point. And since I know you're using Foundation, you can then, tweak the styles with the class that you add to your point using swatches.
Yeah.
So if you really wanted like custom styles for each point, I guess you can give a point a class. Each point could have its own class, and then each point could have its own styles if you really wanted to go that far.
Yeah, I just have a collage of pictures of like 50 different Nobel laureates and stuff in a giant collage, and then have points set up so that when you point to them, it pops up their name. And now with that link, now I can take you to their bio page.
Ooh, very cool. I like it. That's very cool. I like that. Okay. Hey, next up. So on top of last week, I started working on. I actually started. What sprung all this was I was working on the Foundation open source project. So if you know the Foundation stacks that I have, they're all based on an open source framework that I am also the maintainer of, called coincidentally Foundation, right? So the website for the open source project went down, and or it didn't go down, but the links weren't working for some reason. Long story short, I ended up working like an entire day, probably like 15 hours on the issue. It ended up being a simple checkbox that if I known the host added a new feature and checked it by default, would have saved me 15 hours and 59 minutes, right? But no, I didn't know they did that. So, but anyway, I ended up reworking a lot of stuff on the open source project. And now that I shipped all that to those developers, I wanted to get some of those nice new changes into the stacks. So I started incorporating a lot of the framework updates that I did into the Foundation theme. And that took me down like a little performance rabbit hole. If you don't know, I spent 3 days trying to shave off like 50 kilobytes from the theme, right? So doesn't seem like a lot, but every little bit counts. So I worked really hard on trying to optimize the theme. Right now, most of the changes so far are on the theme and performance and kind of slimming things down. I think I shaved a total of about 100 kilobytes almost from the theme. So that means every web page will be 100 kilobytes smaller, which is cool. So that 100 kilobytes cost me a lot of heartache. So let's go ahead and I can kind of preview some of that. Some of it, there again, there's not much user-facing stuff for you guys. It's there are a couple small things I'll show you, and some things I actually learned about the RapidWeaver theme API and some project settings that I'm going to start recommending people do. So we'll go ahead and let's look at those. All right, let's go ahead and let's go ahead here. Let's open up the Foundation Stacks project. So it is, I currently have published this new beta version to foundationstacks.com. And if you guys check it out, like the site is blazing fast. I do have, oh, that wasn't, oh no, where's, there it is. Look at that. I got, there we go. I got, that was Google page speed. I got pretty much all hundreds. They dinged me 2 points for accessibility because they want my orange buttons to be darker. And I didn't want them to be any darker. So I was like, you know what? I'm fine with a 98. So I didn't want my orange buttons to be any darker. I figure they're readable enough. Okay. So anyway,
I assume you confirmed that with Chris.
yeah, exactly. I did make them darker than they were. They were a little lighter, and I can agree. So I actually use this my color picker that I like is called Color Slurp, and it has a contrast checker. And I don't think I have here. If we go, there we go. Let's say this is a light orange here. Right, and it says it fails, right? There's not enough contrast in between these two colors, right? And what's kind of cool is you can just say, okay, fix it for me. And then it'll kind of give you a guesstimate of a color. It picks a color closest to it that will give you a good accessibility rating. Let's go ahead and fix that. There we go. That's actually the color that I used. And this tool says that it gives me an AA+ rating for accessibility. Yet Google, when I used that color, still dinged me. So I said, whatever, Google, I don't care. I don't want to go any darker than this. So I think that's enough content.
What app is that, Joe?
That's Color Slurp.
Slurp colors.
Yeah, it's my color picker of choice. You know, it stores palettes of colors, and you know, it does all the normal color picker stuff. But I do like this little contrast thing, and I like that you could just say fix, and it kind of gives you an idea of what, at least the shade that would give you a better contrast. So there you go. I think I own every color picker on the App Store. I actually talked to the dev of Color Slurp, going off on a little tangent here. They're completely rewriting the app and updating it for some of the latest new web color technology that's been coming out the last couple of years, which no other color picker supports. It was supposed to be released last month. I sent him an email last week asking him what the status is, but I haven't heard back yet. So, oh well.
I just realized I owned that and I didn't even have it installed.
So one thing I did, going off a little tangent. So I always I would have my color picker, kind of, minimized on the dock or not open. And then I go to, choose a color for something. And I just, because the color picker is here, I would just use the Apple color picker, which always has some issues and is kind of annoying. So what I've done is I have a keyboard shortcut that activates Rapid Weaver. I just do, it's actually caps lock key R. Okay. And what I modified it. So not only does it open up Rapid Weaver, but it also opens up Color Slurp and puts it right there. So now all I have to do is just take the color that I want and drop it right there.
Will that fix those color issues when you're using the Apple color picker if you drag out of that one straight into Rapid Weaver?
I don't know.
That's mint. I didn't know you could.
It's possible.
That is absolutely perfect.
So I have all the Weaver Space colors here. So a lot of times, I tend to use these for demos or whatever, and obviously grayscale, all the various shades of gray to black or white to black. So yeah, I just take this color and be like, whoop, there we go.
That's genius. I didn't even realize the palettes thing there.
Yeah, you can do that. Most color apps, you can drag and drop a color. I don't want to say all, but I know like SIP is another big one that you can drag and drop into a color picker there with that too.
That's cool. That makes life so much easier.
Yeah. Okay. So
sorry about the tangent. I apologize.
No worries. What was that? Oh yeah, Foundation. So this is the Foundation theme or Foundation project. It is super uber fast. So what changes did I make? Okay. Guys, actually one fun thing I want to do during this live stream, I'll show you the things that I changed on the user facing side. And maybe I'll geek out and show you some of the stuff that I did, but the code. But what did I do? Oh, site styles. Okay. So inside site styles, one thing I did is I split up the utility classes. Okay. By default, both I split it into half, or actually it's 1/3 and 2/3. So you might have seen a post that I posted, I think it was this week, on Weaver Space, asking about the size-based utility classes. So the utility class that is in the current shipped version, that CSS file is about 90 some odd kilobytes. Okay. 22 kilobytes are a majority of the classes, and then 60 plus kilobytes, almost 70 kilobytes, are only these size-based classes. Now, what are those size-based classes? Here, let's go ahead and I'll show you. If you're not familiar with the utility classes, there is a stack here called classes. You can add this to the page, and you can see what they all are. Okay. And these size-based classes that I'm talking about are only on margins, paddings, width, and height. And what they do is they allow you to add specific, let's take margins, for example. You can do, M : and then your size. And that adds a margin on all sides. But then you can also do MD : M : size. And what that does is it only applies that to the medium size. And then you can do LG, which only applies it to the large size. And these MD and LG size utility classes work for every single one of these. So it's M, MT, MB. So you can be like, LG colon MB colon, and then your size. And that would do a margin bottom only on large of that particular size. It's very, very targeted, and all of these size-based takes up, again, almost 70 kilobytes, which is about over 2/3 the size of the file. And not many people use them. Okay. And if you do use them, it's very, very little. They're not used much. Okay. So what I decided to do was I split them into two. So by default, it'll still load all of them. So I don't want to break any existing projects out there that actually use them. But if you don't use them, I recommend you go into site styles and you uncheck the utilities extra classes. Okay. And that will disable all of those size-based utility classes, and it will remove 70 plus kilobytes of CSS being loaded on your page that you're probably never using. Okay. Now, if you don't use utility classes at all, like you just want to use swatches, you can uncheck this and it won't load any utility classes. Okay. But I particularly like the utility classes. I do think they're useful. Even I find these size-based ones just a little too granular, and I don't use them hardly at all either. Okay. So this gives us an option of really reducing the size of our web pages. Okay. Just an example, I actually, on this homepage that we're looking at, the homepage of this, I was using like 3 or 4 different of those size classes. Okay. I was using them a little bit. So all I did was I just went ahead and created a padding swatch that had specific paddings for the breakpoints that I was using inside with those utility classes. So I created 2 padding swatches. And because of that replaced all of the size-based utility classes that I was using. So that, but with these 2 swatches added, I can then remove the extra utility class and save myself 70 kilobytes. So pretty cool. Any questions on that? Okay. So yeah, so there's these 2 new checkboxes are new. There used to be inside there used to be a utility classes option to add here. I've removed that. Okay. If you have it added to your project, you can leave it there. It's not going to do anything. The stack is just empty. It has 0 logic in it now. It's all moved to these 2 checkboxes that are on by default. Okay. Okay. Next up. So I did reduce the size. All right, let's go ahead and look at some of these bad boys. We're going to geek out a little bit, guys. We're going to look in the dev inspector here, and we'll show you some, obviously Foundation loads. It has a bunch of CSS from the theme. It has a bunch of JavaScript from the theme. I also, another big update. Good thing I saw this. Before I dive into that, I've reduced the size of the Foundation CSS by, I think it was like 40 kilobytes. Okay. Basically, I had a bunch of code in there that still, curtailed to IE8 and IE9 and stuff like that. So I removed a lot of that, since even Microsoft doesn't even support those browsers anymore. So that saves us about 40 kilobytes per page, just in this one CSS file. Okay. Next, in the Foundation JavaScript file, I think I reduced this by I think it was 20 something kilobytes, purely by, this is obviously a compiled JavaScript. I mean, it looks like this if you looked at the raw file. I just updated, like I said, I was working on build tools, just used a new updated compiler that has more optimizations. Didn't have to reduce any code. I just used this new compiler, updated compiler, and saved me about 30 kilobytes. So that was cool. Out of that. Another thing that I've done, okay, is Foundation 6.14 will load jQuery 3.7 by default. And well, it will. There's no way to load an older version right now. Okay. Before, in order to load jQuery 3, you had to add a child stack into site styles. Now it just does it. Okay. jQuery 3 has been released for 8 years now. And the only reason stacks still use jQuery 2 was for some very old stacks. I have no clue what stacks out there don't support jQuery 3, but developers have had 8 years now to add support for jQuery 3 to their stacks. So jQuery 3, again, it's much faster, it's much lighter weight, and you won't get flagged in Google PageSpeed and whatnot for like security issues from versions of jQuery. So we load this version of jQuery was just released in May, so it's the latest and greatest, most optimized version, and it will get loaded on your page regardless. So that could mean if you're using some ancient stack on a Foundation 6 website, it may not work. I don't know. So that there could be some issues there. Right now, as of right now, there are no way to revert this. It is a change that is happening. But I don't think there's going to be any issues. All of my stacks have worked with jQuery 3 for many years, so I think we should be golden. Okay. Some other performance improvements. It's kind of hard to show. It's hard to see this without going extremely into the weeds. But basically, what Foundation will do now is, so when your web page loads, there's two ways assets can be loaded onto the web page. It's either a render blocking load or asynchronous. Okay. So by default, let's take CSS files, or even JavaScript files. When it gets to a CSS file, the web browser will stop rendering the entire page, load that CSS file, and once that CSS file is downloaded and loaded into the browser, then it goes to the next thing. Okay. If that's another CSS file, it won't render any more of the page until that CSS file is rendered, so on and so forth. Okay. So what Foundation 6.14 does is it has intelligence to know what are the critical CSS files that are needed to render your page. Any non-critical CSS file that it finds, it will load it asynchronously. And what that means is it'll load it in the background and it won't pause the browser from rendering everything below it. That's important for things like a big one is, let's say, Font Awesome. That's not a critical thing that we need to pause the browser's rendering in order to load the CSS for it and all the icon files for it, right? That could just happen in the background. And when the browser's done, all the icons will just magically work, right? So libraries like that can be loaded in the background. Whereas CSS from like your stack settings or the Foundation CSS file, which contains, how all the columns are built and how everything looks, right? Those are important to actually wait till they load till we render our page. Because if we loaded those in the background, you would see a flash of what's tend to be called a flash of unstyled content. Okay. What that means is because everything's getting loaded in the background, that will make your page load super quick. But your page is going to look like shit for like half a second because none of the styles have loaded yet. You'll just see white background, black text, maybe some images, and nothing will look good. But then magically everything will just look good all at once. That flash of unstyled content is something we don't want because it really does look amateurish. So that's why this critical CSS loading that I built into Foundation 6.14 will load certain CSS files and before the page is rendered to make sure that we don't have that flash of unstyled content. Does that make sense? Cool. And that gives us a performance boost because the current version now, all CSS files will be loaded, will block the rendering. Okay. So we will see any, non-critical CSS get loaded in the background, which will then cause our pages to actually get loaded faster. Okay. All right. Did someone say something?
Very good.
No. Okay, cool. Let's see. What else did it do? Oh, let's go and let me share my screen again. Okay. Some settings that I'm going to recommend, at least you could do that in your current projects. I think it actually will be beneficial, but especially in 6.14. After playing around with how RapidWeaver loads various things, okay? So in your advanced project settings, we have all these checkboxes, okay? These are the 2 checkboxes that I'm going to recommend you check. Everything else you can uncheck. Now, with a couple considerations. If you're using a breadcrumb stack or a theme that has breadcrumb, you might need to turn that on. Okay, that's indifferent. That's up to you. If you're using the email address that is if you're using this field somewhere, okay, support at Weaverspace, or wherever this email address is, this is mostly for themes, not foundation. Okay. If you're using this field and it's actually getting populated somewhere on a web page because you put it in there, then you might want to do protect email address. Okay. If you're using RapidWeaver's sitemap, you might want to turn that on. Okay. Consolidate CSS files. If you're using Foundation 6, I don't recommend you turn that on any longer. Okay. And if you have minify CSS and JavaScript and you're using Foundation 6, I don't recommend you turn that on either. Okay. So the only 2 I think are important, cache busting links, I think is a great thing. I've talked about that a lot. It's for caching. Okay. It's great. I strongly recommend you have that turned on. And tidy website links, that allows you to have, remove the index from the end of your URLs. I think that's a good thing too. So I recommend these 2 things to be checked. While we're in here, I set my default page extension to be PHP. I just think it saves me a lot of headache of later on adding a stack to a page and it changing from HTML to PHP. And then I have to go to my server and delete the HTML file, which is annoying. So I always just make my default extension PHP. Okay. Another thing I noticed, and this drove me nuts for quite a while yesterday, is if you change, let's say this consolidate CSS files, you have to restart RapidWeaver for that change to actually take effect. I didn't realize that. So if you change at least the consolidate CSS, I didn't do much testing on the minify, but I already minify everything in Foundation. So having RapidWeaver minify already minified code can potentially cause some conflicts. So yeah, I already minify everything. So don't need to worry about that. And then again, the consolidate. If you're curious what the consolidate is traditionally in traditional themes, a theme would contain like 50 different CSS files. And each of these very mini CSS files did like 1 or 2 things. And RapidWeaver had that consolidate CSS file. So it would take all those 50 CSS files and put it into one, which was great back in the day. Foundation has 1 CSS file. I'm not even talking to you. I didn't even say the word Siri. Foundation has 1 CSS file. So by checking that consolidate CSS file or consolidate setting, what I've noticed is that RapidWeaver sometimes will do like consolidated CSS and then consolidate to CSS for some reason. And then like your server gets filled with these consolidated files. And so, yeah, you don't need it in Foundation. Just turn that off and we should be golden. Okay. It'll just load foundation.css, which is built into the theme, and you should be good to go. Okay. Any questions on that? I know some of that recommendations are new, especially the consolidate and the minify. A lot of time, traditionally, I've had those checked. And as I was just doing, again, more optimizations on theme and really playing around with all these little settings to see exactly what they did and how they affect the outcome, I recommend turning those off. It won't break your site if you have them on. I don't expect it to. I mean, I've used them for years too. But I just see them as unnecessary and don't need to have them on. Okay. And that's all I have with Foundation 6.14 as of right now. There I had a couple other small little updates here and there, nothing huge or fancy. I have a couple things on my list that I might add. There's a couple forum features that people have been asking for that look interesting. I might add those. But the big thing here is this update to the theme. And so while on the surface, it doesn't look like a lot, under the covers, it's actually quite large changes and gives us a little bit of performance boost.
Very cool. Good job, Joe.
Switched all them off. Brilliant. It does in a little. Yeah.
Well, with that, open up the floor. Anyone have any questions or things they'd like to talk about?
I just switched all them off on my new project.
Over to the what project?
I'm just starting a new project for someone, so I've just switched all them bits off you said.
Okay.
So we'll see. But I thought Scott might.
Oh,
ring
one thing
about,
here.
actually.
Maybe this will kind of be a fun exercise. What I wanted to do was one thing I want to. So here on my desktop, I have the current release of Foundation. And what I want to do is I want to compare them. I'm going to show package contents. That's here. So that's I'll do the old one on this side. Okay. And then over here, we're going to do the new one. So we're going to go over here. Let's go to themes. Foundation. 6. Contents. All right. So here's the new one on this side. We're going to go into here. All right. So I just want to compare the sizes here. So here we have 223K is the old one, and the new one is 186K. Okay. Here, hold on. And I want to keep track of this here. All right. So we have foundation.css is 233 kilobytes minus 186 kilobytes. Okay. So that's 47 kilobytes different. And let's look at the foundation JavaScript file. So that went from 163 kilobytes to 152 kilobytes. Okay. So we do foundation.js went from, what did I say, 163 kilobytes minus 152 kilobytes. All right. And then we have, let's see, just the raw HTML file. Let's see, that went from, that's the same, 3 kilobytes to 3 kilobytes. All right. jQuery. I think that's smaller as well. Yeah, a little bit. Every little bit counts. It went from 90 kilobytes to 87 kilobytes. 90 kilobytes minus 87 kilobytes. All right. And then we have the utility CSS file, which went from 70 kilobytes down to 23 kilobytes. Okay. Now to be fair, so the new one has a file called whatinput.min.js. That's 5 kilobytes. That actually used to be inside of foundation.js. So what I'm going to do is here, let's just do this plus 5 kilobytes to be fair. All right. So total, let's see, we are now at 103 kilobytes saved per web page. Pretty cool. I like it. One second, I'm getting a phone call. Sorry, guys. Okay. So yeah, 100, like I guesstimate 100 kilobytes. I was about right. 103 kilobytes saved. That's nice. Anyone working on something or got any questions? I'll tell you something I might add tomorrow. I might work on tomorrow is if anyone has my compass stack, compass allows you to add like arrows that point to, next page or previous page. Right now, when you click on compass, it actually navigates the web page to that particular URL. What I thought would be cool is to integrate it with offsite so that when you click next, it'll load that URL into an iframe inside offsite. So the page actually never refreshes. It'll just load the next URL. So yeah, I thought that was kind of a cool idea. Obviously, the tricky part of that is not only do I need to refresh the iframe URL, but then I need to dynamically modify the links, the next and previous links on Compass. But should be doable. So I thought that was a cool idea, and I've had it on my list for a little while. So I thought that would be an interesting one to do.
Yeah.
So I'll probably implement that tomorrow.
Oh, well, I haven't played with that one yet. I've got it, but I'll give that a go.
Nice. I was actually curious. Does anyone use my placeholder stack?
Which
It allows
one?
you to have like placeholder images. It's a freebie. Okay. And it works with several, or I'd say the reason I'm asking this, it used to work with several online image generation, like auto, placeholder image tools. And all of them have died. So I'm debating whether or not what I want to do with the stack. Do I try to rewrite it? Do I try to find another image service? Do I just let the stack die? I've only had one person ever contact me saying this stack doesn't work anymore. So, and I looked and I was like, oh yeah, look at that. All the services free services that it used no longer work. So, wasn't sure if it was a value, since only one person ever contacted me about it. Although a lot of people find errors or issues and never contact. So, yeah. Does anyone use that? Does anyone find, what are the use cases for, like, I know like when you're designing the site for the first time, I can see like placeholder images and even placeholder text being useful, but like, how can we make it seamless? Like, because the problem with that is, let's say you use a placeholder image stack, right? The problem is later on, you're not going to want the placeholder image. You got to replace it with an actual image. So then you got to replace the stack with the image with like a picture stack from Foundation 6 or something.
Why don't you just make it that if you have it installed, it's a child stack of the image stack? Like the picture stack.
Yeah.
Like,
and then I was also thinking, so I'm thinking also, so that's an interesting idea for placeholder. For placeholder images. I was also thinking like text, like, so let's say I want to design this page. Customer hasn't given me data yet. I just need to put in something in there, right? Like, and I'd love to not have to replace the let's say the header stack or the text stack or whatever text-based stack I have on the page, right? I just want to replace the text in there.
Couldn't you just put something like a macro that if you typed something
That's
in,
exactly what I'm thinking. Like, does that sound interesting? Like if we had like some sort of like placeholder macro thing.
If that was built right into Foundation 6, that'd be sick. Yeah.
That's what I was kind of thinking.
If you had like a macro that was like just like lorem dash, and then you could say like the number of characters or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty useful.
And same thing like for images. Maybe, you just had a placeholder image option where it was just like, you gave it the size, and maybe it's just by default, it could just be like, one of those gray images that just says like 640 by 480 or something. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about? Like those, computer generated images that just, it's a colored square with the, the size or some placeholder text on it or something like that, yeah. And then integrating that into something like the picture stack or something. Okay. So you think that seems like an interesting solution, like the macros? I was thinking exactly the same thing, like some sort of lorem ipsum macro would be cool. Oh, all of a sudden you're muted, Josh. Oh, maybe he's not talking to me. Joe, how's it going, man? I understand. Oh, we got Rod. Rod's coming on.
Joe, back to your points with feeds thought.
Hmm.
That's all of a sudden interesting to me in my own little diversions. How would I approach two pictures on top of each other, say one black and white and one color, and when the black and white is on top, but its transparency would pop to 0 when the mouse is basically hitting that point. Is that just a transparency swatch? Or do I need to get more complicated?
So you just want to hover, when you hover over it, you want the black and white to fade away and you see the one underneath it?
Yeah.
All right. I have a stack called mask that's exactly what it does. You can overlay 2 images on top of each other and the top one fades away.
Good solution for me because I own it.
I mean, if you really want it, you could do that with it all with swatches as well if you really wanted to. You could have 2 images inside of a container. The image that, let's say the black and white image has a position swatch that overlays it on top of the colored image. And then you have a hover swatch that when you hover over it, the opacity of the black and white one fades away. You could probably do it with 4 or 5 swatches, or mask. Yeah.
The short answer is use mask, since I never have before, but I have bought it.
Oh, if you own it, then there you go. That's exactly what mask does. Yeah. Actually, I think
Okay.
the demo is a black and white picture. One of the demos is a black and white picture of me that when you hover over it, it fades and shows a color picture of me.
Yeah, but can I just see your right eye? Can I hover over your right eye and just that part of the thing?
Oh, you wanna unveil? Oh, that's not possible. It would be the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, you can't like show a whole of, okay, I see what you're saying now. No, that is not something that is possible. At least in my knowledge. Maybe someone who's smarter than me could figure something out, but I don't think something like that would be possible.
Okay, wait, so what do you want to do?
Can you substitute a picture in points? So you take out that picture from both of them and shove it into 2 points that overlap each other and do it to the points? We can control the position of the point. We can control the size of the point. You control what the point looks like, right?
Uh-huh.
So couldn't you just sample that part of the picture as a circle or whatever that you want?
Dr. Bob, I can see a bunch of Nobel Prize winners doing this thing. I'll be looking for the code.
It seems like kind of what you're looking for is kind of like something like Magnifico, right? Where you're hovering over, and I mean Magnifico magnifies that particular part of the image. But what you want to do is you just want to show the color version of that. What if you were to use Magnifico, okay, and have, the background image be black and white, the magnified image be color, and then you don't even need to set any magnification. You could set it to be 1:1. Something interesting to give that a shot, maybe, so that the magnifying glass hovers over it again. Because you can have 2 images. The black and white could be the background image, and the magnified image is color. And then when you're hovering over with the magnifying glass, you're magnifying the color image, not the black and white one. Does that make sense?
It does, magnifying it at 0.
Yeah, magnifying it to 0. Yeah,
Okay,
give that a shot.
I will. That's like 2 stacks I've never used that I can take a run at.
Honestly, I just made a like black and white, and you hover over it with swatches. It's just Filter Pro and a hover pseudo state.
No,
Not the
but
mag-
he
not- I
wants
know,
to
not the
target
zoom. I
just
know,
a
I know.
portion of the image.
Yeah.
Let's say like my
Yeah, I know. I'm
eyeball
saying
is
what you initially said though. Your mask
Yeah.
thing, you don't even need that anymore. I just did it within like
with filter. Yeah, you're true. You could do a black and white mask with Filter Pro. That's true.
yeah,
too.
and a hover
Yes.
state of
Yep.
color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
good point. Although
That
to
was
be
a
fair, that swatch is a part of the Filter Pro stack, which integrates with Foundation. So it's because you own the Filter Pro stack
Yes,
that
of
you
course.
have that swatch.
100%.
Yeah. Excellent.
Interesting. Food
Thanks,
time.
Joe and guys.
Oh, no problemo.
Warning.
Warning. Uh-oh.
They need to tell me there's an excessive heat warning in Texas. Give me a break. I've been doing it for 2 months.
Yeah.
Well, guys, if we got nothing else, I guess we can call it quits. Anyone else have any parting questions? Else I'll let you guys go for your day. Sweet.
It was
Thanks for
good.
popping in, Joe, Francesca,
Interesting.
Dr. Bob, David, Chris,
See
and
ya.
Josh. It's always horrible to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
Bill's always a burden.
Downloaded
Never
that.
get over that joke.
Yeah, it's going to double up. Did you notice it was another guy on the Weaver Space community?
Yeah, Daddy Bill's iPad.
No. It was another first name burden, another guy.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was
Oh,
really
I missed that
disappointed I
one.
couldn't answer his question because that would have made me the cooler one.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks for popping on today. Hope you learned something that I didn't bore you to death. Take care, and hopefully we'll see you on Friday at the Hangouts.
Yeah.
Get some sleep,
care.
eh?
Have a good day.
Yeah.